Trauma Center Second Opinion was released in North America on November 19, 2006. One of 9 exclusive launch titles for the Nintendo Wii. Second Opinion is technically the second game in the Trauma Center series, but is also a remake of the first game in the series, Under the Knife, released 1 year earlier for the Nintendo DS. Second Opinion was remade from the ground up for the Wii, with new visuals, new controls, new tools that take advantage of those new controls, a new character, and whole new levels. There's not enough new content here to call it a true sequel, but it is definitely a lot more than you'd expect from a quick and dirty cheap remake. Trauma Center was developed and published by Atlus, produced by a team led by Katsura Hashino, a veteran of the popular long-running Japanese role-playing series Shin Megami Tensei. At first glance, Shin Megami Tensei and Trauma Center have nothing in common, since Shin Megami Tensei is a traditional turn-based JRPG and Trauma Center is a surgery simulator. At least, that is until you experience Trauma Center's completely bonkers storyline. There is a common joke about Japanese RPGs, that in those games the player will often start the game killing random balls of slime in the middle of a grassy field somewhere, and then end the game in a lofty and brilliant higher plane of existence fighting literally God. Trauma Center basically follows the surgery equivalent of that exact same progression, but in about a tenth of the time. I did play Trauma Center Second Opinion back when it first released, and it really fascinated me. At that time, I had played 1,000 games where you shoot or fight or platform your way to victory, but I had never experienced or even considered the possibility of a video game about performing surgery. Trauma Center felt completely different from anything I'd ever played before, and even today it's still a really unique series in a video game landscape which still tends to be dominated by a lot of the same kinds of games. And I still really appreciate any series that uses the medium to do something different. But now we need to talk about Second Opinion specifically.
Paging Dr. Styles.
The first thing you need to understand about Trauma Center is that it is not actually a surgery simulator at all. The term simulator implies that you're attempting to recreate a real-life scenario in as realistic and true-to-life a way as possible, and Trauma Center does not care about realism at all. Trauma Center is an action arcade game that sort of vaguely looks like a surgery game. Trauma Center is set in the magical distant future of 2018, where medical scientists have discovered the incredible healing properties of rubbing fruit jelly all over your body. That's not a joke. In this game, one of your primary tools as a surgeon is a jar of green jelly that you rub on patients to magically cure all their wounds, which is kind of sensual, but also kind of bleh. Which I guess basically describes any sex act, really. When a patient is near death, you can inject green jelly directly into their veins to bring them back to life. I completed several operations by constantly and frantically injecting green jelly into someone's liver or kidney indiscriminately over and over again. I stuffed so much fragrant, healthful green jelly into these people's ailing, sickly bodies that it should be oozing out of their every orifice for weeks afterwards. You can also take a superheated laser and run it all over their spleen or whatever, and the game doesn't punish you for doing this at all. It doesn't care. You can laser anything. It doesn't matter. About a third of the way into the game, the developers forgot that they were even supposed to be making a surgery game. And you spend the rest of the campaign literally battling super viruses with lasers and knives. Which is a shame because the game is actually a lot more fun when you're performing these simpler, more grounded surgeries. The second thing you need to know is that this game is freaking crazy hard. The developers added an easy mode to this remake because the original DS game was actually unbeatable. In each operation, you are given barely enough time to accomplish everything you need to do. It's really stressful. The entire time I was playing, I felt frantic and panicked. Also, all these patients die at the drop of a hat. You are apparently operating exclusively on Mr. Glass from that Bruce Willis movie Unbreakable. You can tickle one of these patients' little toesies with a feather, and their lungs will collapse in response. You can sing a gentle lullaby into their ribcage, and their heart will explode into 1,000 pieces. When I talked earlier about injecting their bodies with a constant stream of magic fruit jelly, that wasn't just for fun. It's the only way to keep them alive. Because they die instantly for seemingly no reason all the time, forcing you to restart the operation over and over again. On a more positive note, I was impressed by how much variety there is in this game. Every single operation, it feels like you're doing something completely new, whether that be transplanting an organ, reconstructing someone's shattered wrist, battling one of a seemingly 100 different kinds of sentient super viruses who all know how to dodge your lasers somehow. You're never doing the same thing you did in the last operation. And sometimes the game will do something completely different and unexpected, like this operation where you use your surgical tools to defuse a bomb, which could have been a lot more fun if the motion controls actually worked, which they don't. But still, it was a cool idea. Now, I finally get to talk about this game's story, and holy crap, this game's story is crazy. It starts off simple enough. Your kind and supportive surgical assistant who's all like, all I want to do is help you be the best surgeon you can be, suddenly moves away and is replaced by the self-righteous, uptight, mean nurse who tells you what a piece of crap you are all the time. And even when you do something right, is like, well, I guess that was pretty good for a frothing moron. If you have a masochistic fetish for pretty anime blondes, this might be very exciting for you, but I don't, so it just made me feel bad. You are able to overcome her disdain and earn her respect just in time for your character to discover that he has actual surgical superpowers, and that he is descended from Asclepius, the ancient Greek god of medicine. That's not a joke or an exaggeration, that's the actual plot of the game. Your character is descended from a Greek god who bestowed upon you surgical superpowers. You are soon recruited by Caduceus, an anti-terrorist organization who battle the medical terrorists of Delphi, who are releasing super viruses on the population of the world for somewhat obscure reasons. Perhaps the most confusing aspect of the story is that this Wii remake actually skips the DS game's entire final act, which included the story's climax and the explanation for the origin of the Delphi terrorists and their goals. The developers just left it out. In the DS versions, there's an entire battle with the terrorist leader, who turns out to be some kind of Nurgle-esque god of diseases who's attempting to bless humanity with rot and illness. This Wii remake skips all that, and so the story just sort of abruptly ends without any satisfying resolution to any of the plot. It's really bizarre. It is a shame the writers fell into the typical Japanese RPG and anime trope craziness, because the story and gameplay are really at their most interesting and fun when you're tackling much more grounded issues. The initial plot of earning your disdainful, high-strung new assistant's respect feels more compellingly human and genuine than any plot about Greek gods and super-terrorists. The operations I enjoyed the most were the ones where the developers had to find some creative way to make a typical surgery more interesting. Like this one where you're performing surgery in the dark on a roadside, so you have to use a pen light to light up where you're working. I enjoy simple, grounded, but still creative challenges like this far more than frantic laser battles against super viruses. Trauma Center Second Opinion is a fun game, and still a very unique game, but it's stupidly difficult, and its story is just stupid. 2 more games in the Trauma Center series were released for the Nintendo Wii: Trauma Center New Blood in 2009, and Trauma Team in 2010. I look forward to rubbing magic fruit jelly into dying men's fatty nipples in those games as well, since I will review every game ever released for the Nintendo Wii, or die myself in the attempt. Oh yeah. Woo! Wee! Woo!